Hey yogis, welcome to my channel. My name is Cassandra and today we're doing a Yin Yoga class specifically to relieve any kind of lower back pain, discomfort, or tension. So have a couple blocks close by. If you don't happen to have any blocks at home, you can always use some cushions, pillows, or even some really thick books that will work just fine. And we're going to start in a comfortable seated position. You can always choose to sit up on a block to elevate your hips if it's hard for you to sit cross-legged and the knees are up elevated. Otherwise, you can sit this way or even just kneeling if that's more comfortable for your low back, that will work. Just doing a little grounding meditation, sit up nice and tall, let your hands rest on the tops of your knees. Getting the chin parallel to the floor. And try to find a neutral spine here. So you're lengthening the crown of your head up to the sky. Relaxing your shoulders, getting the floating ribs in, and just notice if you're leaning in one side or another, front or back. Focusing on your breath, inhaling and exhaling through the nose. And imagine you can send your breath directly to your lower back, wherever you're feeling discomfort at the moment. Just bring awareness to this space and see if you can pinpoint where this tension is coming from. And just try to breathe into it. Notice if you're rounding or slouching. And if at any point during our practice you notice your mind start to wander, just bring your focus back to your breathing. Setting an intention for this practice. To begin, we'll take a cleansing breath, inhaling through the nose and out the mouth. Breathe in deeply. Letting it go and blinking the eyes open. Let's make our way to our first pose, which is baby dragon, just a low lunge. So you might want to have your blocks for this one. Step your right foot forward in between your hands to the top of the mat and really make sure you have your knee directly over the top of your ankle. Because we are here for a few breaths or a little while, you might want to pad your back knee so there's no pain or discomfort. Having the hands down on the ground can make the pose quite intense. So if you want to make it a little bit more restorative, you can elevate yourself by just placing the hands on some blocks. And let your pelvis be heavy. So very often low back tension is caused by tightness in the hip flexors, so tightness at the front of the thigh, which tends to happen if you spend a lot of time sitting, constantly flexing the hip flexors. So we want to open them up and extend them. Relax your shoulders down and away from your ears. And just breathe here. Stay with your breath in and out through your nose. Not going past your edge, not chasing any sensation. We want to make this really restorative. We'll start to ease our way out of this side. Push into your right heel, and you can step back into a tabletop pose. Uncurl your mat if you had it padded, and we'll make our way over to the other side. So this time you're stepping your left foot forward in between your palms, stacking your knee directly over the top of your ankle, and if you'd like, you can roll up your mat, patting your right knee. Let your hips melt forward and down. Draw your shoulder blades down your back so the chest stays lifted and we're not rounding through the upper back and upper body. Lengthen out of the waist. And try to push a little into the fingertips and knuckles. Take some of the weight out of your wrists. And find your breath once more here on this side. So from this baby dragon pose, instead of stepping back to our tabletop, we're actually going to step up to dangling. So you can move your mat back out if you had it folded up. Curl your back toes under, and you're just going to step your right foot next to the left one. Keep your feet quite wide, more towards the edges of the mat, and Ragdoll Fold. Bend your knees very generously. holding onto the elbows and letting yourself hang over the legs. So it's very important here that the knees are not straight. We're not looking to stretch the hamstrings at all. We want to bend so that we can traction out of the low back. And I like to sway side to side, but if being still works best for you, that's perfectly fine. See if you can let your head dangle, neck relax. Just 10 breaths or so here, not holding this one for quite as long. Keeping the belly over your thighs. Release your fingertips down to the ground. Let's take Malasana, a little Yogi Squat. You can turn your heels in slightly, toes pointing out. Bend your knees, drop your hips. Place your hands together at the front of the heart. Try to push your knees open a little wider. So this is a great pose for the lower back. See if you can lengthen the crown of your head up so that you're not rounding and slouching forward. And the heels might be lifted off the ground, which is perfectly fine. To make this pose a little bit easier, if the hips are very tight, you can actually just sit yourself up on a block and work the pose from here instead. Otherwise, the hips drop down. Maintain some length in your neck. And breathe all the way down to the low back. And release your hands down to the mat. We're going to lower down onto our backs. Make sure you have one block somewhere close by within grabbing distance, and just taking a little reclined child's pose, which is just pulling your knees in towards your belly. Letting your spine naturally curve. Just hold on to the shins. Take a few breaths here. And you can always sway or rock side to side, or trace some circles with your knees. Whatever feels good here for your low back. Find that just stillness is what feels best, but it might be different for you. And we'll make our way into supported bridge pose. Hold of your block, and you're just going to lift your hips. I'm going to keep the block at its lowest level. You're welcome to boost it up and go a little bit higher if you'd like. The lower the block is, the more restorative this will be, the deeper the stretch and the deeper the sensation if you increase the height of your block. And you can either just keep your feet flat on the ground with your knees bent. Again, this is an easier variation. If you'd like to go further into the pose, you can extend your legs out in front of you. You'll know immediately if this is too much for your lower back. So we're trying to avoid any kind of pinching and compression. If that's what you feel with your legs straight, definitely keep your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor. But for some, like me, it might feel a lot better for your low back to have the legs extended. And you can place your hands on your belly just to help you take deep belly breaths. Relaxing the shoulders and the upper back. If you had your legs straight out in front of you, you can start to bend your knees and slowly bring the feet back in. We're going to lift our hips off of the block and just set them back down. Widen your feet towards the edges of the mat and just let the knees drop from side to side in a windshield wiper motion, nice and slow. And just releasing that pose. And pull your knees into your belly once more, just giving it a big squeeze. And we'll finish with a laying spinal twist. You can reach your arms out into a T, and I like to just lift the hips and shift them a couple inches over to the right before letting both knees drop down over to the left. So if your knees and thighs are touching the ground, you can stay as you are. If there's a bit of a gap here, you can use your block and place it underneath your thighs or even in between the legs, and you might find that a little bit more suitable for your low back. If the legs are somewhat close to the ground, you can always use your left hand to apply a very small amount of pressure on that right thigh. Try to keep your right shoulder down to the floor. And release. Let's lift the knees back up. We'll make our way to the other side. So you might need to shift your hips a little bit over to the left this time and let the knees drop down over to the right, either with a block or without. Ground your left shoulder to the mat, and you can use your right hand just to apply a little bit of pressure on the left thigh. So spinal twists are one of the best poses that we can do when there's ever low back pain and discomfort. And although we are compressing the abdomen slightly here, keep trying to breathe very low into the belly, into the low back. And let's release the twist from the side. And we'll make our way into Shavasana. So Shavasana, since this is for low back discomfort, it might be a little bit too much to have your legs extended out in front of you. So a really great way to do this one is widen your feet, let your knees fall in towards one another, and settle in the pose here. And draw your shoulders down and away from your ears. And get yourself as comfortable as you can. Taking these last few moments of stillness and silence. Begin to breathe a little bit deeper. We can wake up from this pose, moving in any way that feels good. And now it might feel good to extend the legs out and reach your arms up overhead. Take a great big stretch here. And we'll roll to one side. Lift your way up to take a seat. Sitting up nice and tall. Draw your hands together at the front of the heart. And just notice if your low back feels different now as opposed to when you first stepped onto your mat. And we'll close our practice with a big breath in through the nose and out the mouth. Inhale. Bowing forward. Namaste. Thank you so much, yogis, for doing this practice with me. I hope it gave you a little bit of relief for your lower back. If you're new to my channel, please do subscribe. I put out new classes every single week. Have a great day, and I'll practice again with you soon.